Okay, so this is interaction diagram and force type notes, which is the back page of the interaction stations worksheet. And we're going to take a look at the bottom part of our worksheet. And we are going to draw a sketch of each of the scenario presented, and we're going to write each object with a line showing the type of force interaction that occurs between the two objects. Okay, so we're going to take a look at the bird sitting on the table. All right, and so we see that the bird is just minding its own business, hanging out, sitting on top of the table. And then the table is sitting on top of the floor. And as you can see, this is in our classroom. All right, so we are going to go ahead and draw. Always make sure to include Earth. So that's the first thing that we're going to do. All right, so we're going to draw Earth. All right, and I'm going to draw a floor that's not necessarily touching Earth because I don't know what floor maybe some of us are on, right? So we've got our floor, we've got our Earth, and I'm going to draw the table. I know the table has like one stand and then like 4 little legs that come out of that stand, but I'm just going to draw my table like this. All right, so there is my table. And then we have the bird sitting on top of the table. So there's my bird that's sitting on top of the table. Okay, so now we're going to draw the lines that show that there are interactions between the objects, right? So the bird is sitting on top of the table. So there's my line. The floor and the table. And so then the floor or the table is sitting on top of the floor. And the table is also on Earth. And the bird is on Earth. All right, so now let's go ahead and write what kind of interactions that's happening. So the bird is sitting on top of the table and the table's underneath the bird. And so I would say that the bird is pushing down on the table and the table's pushing back on the bird. Okay. Same thing with the floor. So the table is sitting on top of the floor and the floor is pushing back on the table. And so that would be a normal force. And then we've got the table that is on Earth. And so that would be gravitational force. And the bird that's also on Earth, gravitational force. And if you want, technically, yes, the floor can also have an interaction with the Earth. Okay, and so that is for that first scenario, the bird sitting on the table. And so now we're going to go and take a look at the next scenario, which is that the bird is hanging on the rope. All right, and so obviously that's not a bird, that's a cow. All right, so here is our cow. Right, there's a cow, and the cow is actually there. I couldn't find a string or a rope, so the cow is tied onto the spring. And then you should be able to see that in the classroom unless someone took it down, but please make sure to just leave the cow alone. All right, and so we'll draw all of our things, okay? So we have Earth. And even though it's not pictured, we'll draw the floor. And we'll draw the ceiling because now the ceiling is pretty important. And so in physics, this is how we draw our ceiling. So we know that's a ceiling. All right. And on the ceiling, we've got our spring. If you want, we can also do this. There's our spring. And we've got our cow hanging by the tail on the spring. Okay, so let's go ahead and label what kind of forces. So from the ceiling and the spring, right? So there's some sort of interaction there. And I think what I remember from our previous discussion when we were talking about the object hanging, there was some sort of tension that's happening, right? So that's a tension force. And then the spring and the cow also have some sort of tension, and we can see that the cow's tail is being stretched. We can see that the springs are kind of spreading out. So those are kind of our clues that there's tension. And also we cannot forget that the cow and the earth have a gravitational interaction, and that the spring and the earth also have a gravitational interaction. Okay. So I know I said sometimes that in our classroom that we have frictionless floors, or there's our classrooms in a vacuum, but we have to also make sure that we include the earth. We've got the spring that's interacting with the earth. We've got our cow that's interacting with earth. We've got the floor that's interacting with the earth. And we don't normally do this, but I know some of you will want to, so we'll just go ahead and include that the ceiling is interacting with the earth, but don't worry about it. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and undo that just to, right now, this is what we're going to be focusing on. Okay, so that is scenario 2. All right, so now we've got our bird and the buggy. All right, so the bird is being pushed by the buggy. All right, I couldn't show a better picture of the buggy pushing the bird. So if you want, you can take a look. So the car is moving this way, right? So the car is moving that way to the left. And so our wheels must be moving in this direction. Okay. And then the bird will also be moving to the left. Okay. Even though this is a still picture, it was very hard to take a video of this, but we've got our earth. Okay, we've got the floor. We have our table because the bird and the buggy are both sitting on the table. And so we've got our buggy and we have the bird. All right. There is an interaction between the bird and the buggy, right? So we can see that the bird and the buggy have an interaction because they're being pushed. Right? The buggy's pushing the bird's trying to push back. So that is a normal force. All right. Then we have the bird that's sitting on the table. The table is also pushing back on the bird, and so that's also a normal force. Then we have our buggy that's on the table, but it's also the wheels, right? So the wheels are turning, and so there's going to be some sort of tension force, friction force. So there's also a friction force. And then we have the table that's sitting on top of the floor, and the floor is pushing back on the table, making sure it doesn't fall through. That would be our normal force. And then everything is connected to the earth, right? So everything has an interaction with the earth. So make sure you include that everything has an interaction with the earth. Okay, so then that is the bird and the buggy. And then the last one, we've got the bird that is falling. So I don't know if you can see it, but there's our bird. Our bird is flying. Okay, and I tried my best to capture the bird flying or falling. All right, so we've got our earth. Okay, we have the floor. We have the table. Okay, so the table's right here, right? And the bird is not on the table. The bird is falling. So we're going to go ahead and label the interactions that are happening. We have the table that's sitting on top of the floor. That's a normal force. We have the table that's interacting with Earth, and that's a force of gravity. Okay. Then we have the bird. Since it's not touching, there's no direct interaction with the table. There's no direct interaction with the floor, even though the bird will either hit the table or hit the floor. Currently, at this moment, the bird's interaction is with the earth, right? It's not touching anything else. Okay. And so then that would be it for our interaction station page.